Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee, getting ready to get my day started. Got a hook grip on my cup. And today I thought I would talk with you guys a little bit about power cleans, power snatches, and where they can fit into just a general strength and even size program. Because people kind of miss sight of some of this. And people have asked me, hey, why are you messing around with power cleans even though you're not very good at them right now? What's the point, like in your orc mode training, which is what I'm calling it. It's the whole backstory as to why we're calling it that instead of Bulgarian training. But here's what it comes down to. They have enormous benefits for people who want to be more athletic, stronger, things like that, even when they aren't perfect. And that's kind of the big point of contention people have always had. It's a point I made years ago when I first started my channel that had come up, and I said, well, I don't know. I don't know if they're worth learning from the technical perspective. There's a lot of technique involved. There's a steep learning curve on these lifts, but here's the problem with that idea. That's fine if you are talking about being a weightlifter. In other words, being uncoached on these exercises and not having a coach to teach you and just trying to learn out of books or on the internet or even YouTube tutorials, no, you're not going to be as good at these lifts from a technical proficiency perspective as someone who's competing in weightlifting. However, what people need to understand, that is for people who are trying to maximize technique to be able to lift the heaviest weight possible in a competitive environment on these very technical lifts. That is very different than using them for general training purposes, because what do you look at when we look all around the world for any athletes that need speed and power? Whether it's American football or what the rest of the world calls football that Americans call soccer, basketball, track and field athletes, MMA fighters, boxers, everybody, you see most of the best, most explosive athletes, their coaches have them learn these lifts. They're taught in high school locker rooms, high school weight rooms all over the country to get people ready to play field sports. They aren't that hard to learn from a perspective of, do you need them for just general strength and explosiveness training? Is it just a general exercise? Do you need the technical proficiency that someone needs to do them competitively? Absolutely not. Is the level of technical proficiency that a weightlifter has on these lifts necessary to glean the training benefits of them? Absolutely not. In fact, there are even athletes out there who do almost muscle cleans for the most part who get a training benefit. They get a benefit. And the ironic thing with this topic is that, you have people who are so obsessed with this yoke training thing. They want big shoulders. They want traps, all this stuff. There's all this yoke training nonsense, right? But they don't do any of these lifts. In fact, you'll see coaches everywhere. I've seen multiple articles out there of coaches saying, look, if you guys want this yoked look, you're trying to bring up your traps and upper back and everything, why aren't you doing power snatches, power cleans, snatch grip, high pulls, right? Stuff like that. Those will bring up that area. Now, you're going to see a lot of lifters will come in who are Olympic lifters or weight lifters, whichever term you prefer. It's the same thing. Who are going to say, well, no, the snatch isn't that great of a hypertrophy exercise because you've got to look at the guys using maximum poundages. And, okay, your point is that they're using technique to get maximum poundages. Someone who isn't as technically proficient is going to have to use a hell of a lot more upper back and trap to lift the same weight because they're not as proficient with using the hips and the glutes and the quads and everything else to get the weight accelerated on something like a snatch that these people who are very skilled at the lift are. So they're going to get a training response in that area with a much lighter weight. And when you think about it from the perspective of it is a supplemental exercise there, that works. That absolutely works. And then when you start looking at other accessories people do for these lifts, like, the high pulls or snatch grip deadlifts and stuff like that, you start getting some really, really valuable hypertrophy tools out of it. You get some hypertrophy tools out of it. So the point we need to make here is that there is absolutely some additional hypertrophy potential from these exercises for people who are trying to build particularly the upper back and everything. And I mean, a lot of the muscles that get trained in a deadlift, we can't always deadlift with the volume that we would like. But you can get extra workload through all these areas with these lifts. And in fact, they can improve your deadlift. Now, some people, you're going to see a lot of lifters, you're going to say, I don't know. I don't think, there are coaches who say, I don't think they improve the deadlifts. Other coaches swear by them. Here's the point I would make. Any exercise that has you pull off the floor has the potential to help with your deadlift. Now, someone who's already an enormously powerful deadlifter, if you deadlift 700 pounds already and you start doing power cleans, it may not do anything for you. Probably won't. But for someone who's less advanced, it can help with some of that, because again, any exercise where you pull from the floor, if you don't do Pendlay rows or mini rows of any type and you start rowing from the floor, you will usually start seeing your deadlift go up, right, from just doing that alone because of the muscles that it builds and everything else. So again, the same thing kind of applies there. It's a valuable exercise for that. These exercises can have some carryover to other lifts, and that kind of comes to the point that what we're looking at. These lifts help you achieve your explosive potential, even if they're not performed perfectly. Even if they're performed with mediocre technique, these lifts can help you train your explosive potential. Now, and that's a point that needs to be made, potential doesn't mean they're going to automatically make you explosive, because explosiveness is largely genetic. Your explosive potential is largely genetic, and a lot of people, their genetics are so good at explosiveness that they are just explosive without training it, right? There are kids who don't lift weights who have a 32 or a 36-inch vertical jump. Then they go train for explosiveness while they're gaining some muscle, and they might add 2 inches to that over time. So again, that's a genetic potential is so high in those people that it's just there already. But other people, you will need to train it to some extent to keep it in ratio with the strength and the size that you gain. In other words, what we're looking at is if you don't want to risk getting slower as you get bigger and stronger, because we don't mean that you're going to be able to produce less force. If you go from a 300-pound deadlift to a 500-pound deadlift, your ability to produce force has gone up, but it's because you've gained absolute strength. However, that absolute strength may not keep pace with your ability to produce force quickly. So by doing these explosive exercises, you can help retain your explosiveness potential relative to your strength instead of it kind of going down, because that's what can happen if you're not careful. You might be slightly slower for the amount of strength that you have or the amount of size that you have. And it's not to say you're not still going to be explosive, because a guy who can deadlift 600 pounds and squat 500 pounds is going to be able to hit something with a fair amount of force on a playing field or anything else. So there's still force there, but it's about that potential for explosiveness. And these exercises can help your explosiveness keep pace. It can help your explosiveness keep pace with your strength. In addition to the fact that they're all around good exercises. These are exercises that work muscles through the entire body. They can help hit upper threshold fibers through the entire body. That's going to give you potential carryover to other exercises, make you all around better. They tend to make you all around more athletic and better. And what we need to point out again is that the amount of proficiency that's required on these exercises to get that training benefit can be learned in a month or two. And that's kind of where we get into this conflict with weightlifters, because weightlifters view these exercises sometimes, this is our bread and butter, this is what we do. And they develop fantastic technique on it to allow them to be competitive in these lifts. And, they'll sometimes look at the way some field athletes or power lifters or other people are utilizing these and say, well, it's not, they're not doing it very well, even though they've been doing it a while. Their technique needs a lot of work. And yeah, their technique does need work if they want to be highly proficient at these exercises in that degree, but it may not be required, and it probably will not be required for them to develop some explosiveness, to develop some size, and to develop some strength from these exercises. And that's a big difference there. And that's where we get into the nuances of this, and where it becomes a big debate is that these exercises have a place in the general strength and conditioning world, and they have a very valuable niche. They have a very valuable niche there that doesn't require that degree of proficiency, because that same argument towards the proficiency that the weightlifters will oftentimes put forward is then utilized by some coaches and other people to say, well, they're just not worth learning then. If they require so much technical proficiency to be really good at them, it takes away time from other stuff that my lifters and athletes could be doing. And the problem with that is that you got to remember, you're not trying to become a weightlifter. You're not trying to become a weightlifter. You're utilizing exercises that they have developed and adopted over the years to realize that those exercises have their own merit outside of a competitive environment. Just like we wouldn't say that the deadlift has no value unless you're a power lifter and unless you develop, the best deadlift possible, that there's no point in doing it. That's just simply not true. And granted, that's different because that's a far, far less technical exercise. The deadlift is not a highly technical exercise anywhere near to the same degree that those are. But the point is still valid. It's a valuable exercise, even if you don't have perfect technical proficiency at it. It's still a valuable exercise. Even a deadlift done without ideal levers being done in place, maybe you grip too wide, maybe your stance is too wide, you're still going to get bigger and stronger from it. And the same thing with these other exercises. Just because you don't have the technical proficiency and ability or can lift the weights that a weightlifter does with them doesn't mean that these are not extremely useful exercises that are valuable for, again, general athleticism, explosiveness, strength, full body strength, and in some cases, again, additional workload being put to a large number of different muscles in your body. So again, it adds to your total workload that you're doing. They're very valuable exercises, absolutely. And I've started to lean more in that direction, that I think people need to be doing at least one of these. It's probably not a bad idea. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.